Hal Hinson of the Washington Post calls this movie the best American comedy since Tootsie. Gene Siskel says, "I'm not sure this movie knows what it's really about, but I certainly enjoyed the confusion." And Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times said, "It won't overwhelm you or change your life, but after all the more obvious laughter is over, it may just make you smile." On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of 1993's Groundhog Day.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Welcome to Ruined Childhoods podcast. This is Dan Wiener, and I'm here with my brother, John Richardson. Hey, John, how's it going?
Hey, Dan, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, doing all right here. Snowed in Seattle.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We were here in Portland, Oregon, facing the fears that seem to have resulted in Seattle, but ended up getting just flurried on a little bit.
Just flurried on a little bit, yeah.
Just flurried on a little bit, no big deal.
No, this was one of those, like, it started on Friday here, and I have a classroom. For those just joining us for the first time, I am a high school teacher, and my classroom does not have windows to the outdoors, which is kind of a bummer, but when it was snowing the other day on Friday, I was so glad, because otherwise I would have had these kids, especially because it doesn't snow. It snows maybe once a year here. So when it does, they are like, the show is on, the snow show.
Right. Now, for anybody who isn't in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle today looks like February 3rd in Groundhog Day.
Yes.
And Portland looks like February 2nd. So
Yes.
to put it in
Excellent
context
segue.
of what we're talking about on this episode of the
Yes.
podcast,
Yes.
that's what we're talking about.
However, our Phil Connors, Cliff Mass is the weather. Shout out to Cliff Mass. He is like,
what a name. Love it.
when you move to Seattle, one of the first things you learn is that Cliff Mass is the authority. And if Cliff Mass says, stock up on bread and milk, you go stock up on bread and milk. So Cliff
Fair
Mass,
enough.
yeah, Cliff Mass gave the heads up, and he said this one's going to be a bad one. So the nice thing is I might have some extra time to watch some movies. So
prior to this weekend, the all of the news outlets have been referring to what would potentially be happening as snowpocalypse. And today I was walking outside, and this woman walked past me, and there was like a singular flurry falling from the sky, and I just heard her mutter under her breath, "Snowpocalypse," and it was like it was to herself, but also to me, acknowledging how fed up we are with the ridiculous predictions of the weather. Anyway, let's talk about movies.
yeah, and I just want to start off by saying the passing of Albert Finney this past week.
Oh, yeah.
I want to acknowledge that, and just kind of give a shout out to the memory of Albert Finney. We recently watched the movie Annie, and I saw it for the first time in a long time. And another favorite of mine with Albert Finney, which I watched not too long ago, Miller's Crossing.
Yeah.
And he was just such a powerhouse, and he will be missed.
Absolutely. Big Albert Finney fan over here. Also, in the news, we heard a lot of remake and reboot news.
Yeah.
I know that you and I talked about, briefly, because we try not to talk about things when we're not recording like this, but
Right.
the sequel, the trailer dropped for the reboot of Child's Play.
Yeah.
And you seem to be a little, like, I think your response was it can't be as good as the original.
I would like to know more. I would like to know more. I particularly would like to know how Chucky becomes evil. That I didn't catch that from the teaser, but I remember in the original it was of course the actor Brad Dourif playing this killer who, and then he all of a sudden knows, like, is really awesome at black magic and voodoo, and it puts his soul into this Chucky doll, the good guy's doll.
Sure.
Which, can I tangent for a moment?
Tangent away.
Funny story. So the good guys dolls were modeled after the My Buddy dolls from the early 80s, and they
My buddy,
my buddy and me is whatever the rest is. But
wherever he goes, wherever you go,
where you go,
he'll go
he's
along.
gonna go,
Something like that.
So anyway, My Buddy was, I don't know how many, he's small with overalls and a long sleeve striped shirt and short brown hair, similar to the Chucky look, but looked very similar to our brother Scott, who had
You think
one.
so?
Who had one. Oh, yes.
I know. I remember he did have one.
Well, he looked so similar that there was one time I remember that Grandma, our grandmother, Charlotte,
shout out
to Shirley. Charlotte was staying with us and watching us, and Scott, she came in to check on you and Scott, and you two you were in bed, and Scott's My Buddy was on the floor. And
jeez.
Grandma thought that Grandma freaked out because she thought Scott was like passed out on the floor face down and like wasn't moving. It wasn't like,
oh my God.
She felt for a pulse. It just felt like cold and stiff and,
a little rubbery.
Yeah. So funny story. Thank you for the tangent.
So, yeah. So, what's interesting about a Child's Play reboot is that they've been making Child's Play sequels actively. The latest one was just in 2017.
Was that Cult of Chucky?
That was Cult of Chucky.
Cult of Chucky.
That's right.
And am I mistaken in saying that there is also a Chucky TV show in development?
I believe so.
I believe
that sounds about right. So, what I found interesting about the trailer for the new Child's Play is that it very closely not resembles or necessarily mirrors, but it's reminiscent of what we were talking about in the first episode with Short Circuit, about different ideas of how to get a number 5 into the, I guess, 2019 point of view using drones.
Yeah.
So clearly this new Chucky has some sort of artificial intelligence system. One of the first things you see is a kid open a box and like a red line like scans his face.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And one of my, as I'm trying to think like, all right, so what happens? This is the same like serial killer puts his spirit in it. And then I was like, what if they kind of took a page out of 2001 and we had like a HAL 9000 thing going on where Chucky just kind of has a malfunction and decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to kill people.
Sure. Why not? And let's see, as far as reboot or sequel news, is there anything else?
Escape from New York.
Oh, that's right. Escape from New York.
It's that time of year again when we hear talk of an Escape from New York remake or reboot or sequel. And it was Robert Rodriguez a couple of years ago,
right?
Which I was, kind of interested in that. Now I
could see that.
Leigh Wanell of Saw fame, I believe.
Okay.
And
all right.
Insidious or The Conjuring, one of the two. But, regardless, a known name in horror. Right.
And I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead, because I was going to kind of give my 2 cents here. But
oh, no, give your 2 cents, because I was going to move on to another one that's coming up. But I'd like to hear your thoughts about Escape from New York.
Yeah, I just, and full disclosure, I've never been a huge fan of the movie. I think I've always fallen asleep while watching it, but it doesn't mean I think it's a bad movie. I just think it just hasn't clicked with me. I think it's a really cool concept. I think Kurt Russell is badass. Snake Plissken is an iconic character. I don't know how much I would want to see someone else play Snake Plissken. The closest I could think of would be like, I'd be interested to see a Bradley Cooper take on Snake Plissken, but
I could see that.
It's still not Kurt Russell. All due respect to Bradley Cooper. Kurt Russell, 1981, Snake Plissken, iconic. I mean, it didn't even work when John Carpenter like did a sequel / kind of remake with Escape from L.A. and like Steve Buscemi,
which I found enjoyable.
It was okay, but it wasn't. I mean, it was like he's surfing it, and
yeah, it's kind of weird.
It wasn't as gritty as the original Escape from New York. I have a lot of respect for, and I just feel like, you know, they tried to remake The Fog, another John Carpenter classic, and that didn't work out. They tried to. I didn't see the remake of The Thing, but The Thing is just such.
I
an
didn't see that either.
Original,
yeah.
And I feel like, especially Escape from New York and Big Trouble from Little China, the Kurt Russell John Carpenter double feature.
Right.
Yeah, those to me are kind of untouchable.
Big Trouble in Little China, yeah, I wouldn't go near that one.
I would love to see a remastered big screen re-release. Same thing with Escape from New York. Just like I see that they're doing that with Karate Kid. They're going to put Karate Kid back in theaters for the 35th anniversary, and I'm all for that. You know, spice up the print, get it out there, and put it in theaters.
Spice up the print.
Spice up the print. I don't know where that.
Spice up the print.
That's Hollywood talk.
The one other thing that I was going to mention is that I saw they just released a new sequel for the Pet Sematary reboot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Have you seen any of those trailers?
I've caught some glimpses at them.
What's that guy's name who's in it? Jason Clarke, is that his name?
Jason from the Planet of the Apes remakes.
Yeah,
among other
feels
things.
like the right person for that kind of movie.
Yeah.
I buy it.
I mean, I didn't see the original, nor have I read the book, though I just picked up a copy of the book.
Oh,
I'm digging into some Stephen King.
Clearly.
Lately. Yeah. So I'm interested to kind of to read the book, and the whole concept has always kind of, I'll be honest, it's kind of freaked me out. I've always been a little nervous to watch the movie.
I'm not the biggest horror person, but like watching that trailer for the new one, I was like, ooh, this looks pretty creepy, like in a fun way that I would enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember seeing the original one. If I did, it was a long time ago. Yeah. But
yeah.
And
it's interesting because is it supposed to be part of this? I'd heard rumors of this, like a Stephen King cinematic universe and all the connections, because the Dark Tower apparently, does connect a lot of the Stephen King stories, though the film version of the Dark Tower was terrible.
So does Maximum Overdrive fall into the same universe?
Maximum Overdrive is, unless you're going to get Emilio Estevez back, I'm sorry. That one needs to stay where it belongs. That's
yeah.
I think Stephen King would agree with that. So
I think so too. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Is that I want to rescind my endorsement that I gave on the last episode for the involvement of Max Landis, because then Me Too allegations came out, and I have a no-nonsense, zero-tolerance policy, so we can just scratch that from the record.
Wow, and we've just got our finger on the pulse, because that will come into our discussion of Groundhog Day.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. So, 1993. When did it come out around Groundhog Day? When was the release for this one?
I believe it was I think it was around Groundhog Day. Let me double check. This is the type.
February 12th, 1993.
Yeah, so right after Groundhog Day.
It's lining up actually exactly with the release of this episode.
Nice.
February
Well
12th.
done.
Perfect. I don't feel as bad about being late on the Groundhog Day episode.
No. I mean, well, this is
perfectly lined up.
this
Great.
movie's all about how it's never too late. So,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so it was released, February 12th, 1993. Total.
Do you remember where you saw it? Because I feel like that's the kind of thing that you would remember.
I saw it on VHS at home when I rented it from Blockbuster. I didn't see it in the theater.
Got it.
So
And I'm sure I was with you watching it. That feels
probably
about right.
Probably. Yeah. And so I didn't see it in the theater, and when I saw it originally, I liked it. I remember I didn't love it. I didn't really like when it got dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there were I remember I had mixed feelings about it, and for me it's aged pretty well.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so enjoyable. I watched it with our brother Scott.
Very nice.
It is one of the very few DVDs that he owns. And it was Groundhog Day when we watched it. It felt just so appropriate. It was great. It was just like morning. I was staying at his place, and it was like, let's pop it in. It was just really fun to watch it, and I feel like every time I watch it, I appreciate it more. Clearly, in '93, when I was 10 years old when I first saw it, so I'm positive that I didn't get any of the nuances, any of the jokes. I didn't really get what was going on, except for the idea, like the very bare bones of the plot.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't. There's a lot that I didn't pick up on. There's a lot that I picked up on when I watched it recently on Groundhog Day. I think
Right.
overlapping with when you and Scott were watching it.
Right.
And it was there was a lot of it that I really seeing it for the first time in several years. I think seeing it for the first time since transferring my career, becoming a teacher, since starting a family. So a lot's changed for me, and it's one of those movies that I think really does speak to people personally.
Right. Now, this movie, when you go and look at the trivia for a movie like this compared to a movie like Short Circuit or Weekend at Bernie's, you get a lot more, and it's a lot more dense. There's a lot of people looking at it from a psychological perspective. I read one article in like Psychology Today about it. Like, there's just so much more about this one because it really focuses on the self-improvement allegory, and finding out things about the production are so interesting. What's up?
Well, what's interesting is first I read an essay, kind of a similar philosophical essay on a blog called Bright Wall Dark Room, and it it talked about
Clever
it.
name, I like that.
And then I was thinking about the article as I was watching the movie, and I thought, Phil, why would you pick that name? Why that name? And I thought, well, Phil, short for is the academic abbreviation for philosophy. Philosopher, philosophical, and I looked up the meaning of the name Phil or Philip, and it is seer of seers.
Is it really?
Yeah, which
That's
connects
cool.
so much to his career as a weatherman. I hesitate to call him a meteorologist. He doesn't take his job that seriously. But also it's interesting because the movie is now becomes like a daily reminder to him of how bad he is at his job. Because every day it's, I thought that wasn't going to hit here. I thought we weren't going to be affected by that.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating character. Yeah, and I think that if you do look at it from the perspective of like this psychological aspect, it's somebody who has veered so far, of course, from who they should be that they have all these opportunities to get it right. Yeah. And it's just a really enjoyable exploration of seeing this person amazingly portrayed by Bill Murray.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's equal parts enjoyable and thought-provoking.
It's amazing because it's a movie that ultimately shows a character going through an entire arc, an entire transformation, really over the course of one day, yet one day repeated. Yeah. So it's, you know, he keeps getting this do-over. He keeps getting this, you know, reincarnation every time, and it's like, okay, let's see what you do with your day this time. And he does really bad things, and then he does you really see him evolve as a character through these experiences that he has, getting to relive the same day.
Yeah. Now, there's a few little fun things that I want to draw attention to. You know what? I don't have her name in front of me right now. I need to look that up real quick. But the waitress at the diner.
Oh, yes. I have her name, Miss Robin Duke.
Robin Duke, yeah. So you can see her now. She's on the show Man-Seeking Woman and Schitt's Creek. She's the woman who runs the Blouse Barn in Schitt's Creek, which is perfect. And it reunites her with Chris Elliott, who plays Larry. Mm-hmm. We have another two movies with Larry in a row. Cool.
And Robin Duke was also an SNL cast member back in the 80s, mid-80s.
That's true. That's true. She's fantastic, but as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh my God, like it just kind of clicked for me. Like I had no idea that was her all this time, all these years that I've been watching this movie. And, you know, now that I see her in 2018, 2019, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
She's been with me all this time. I had no idea. Because I'm sure that when she was on SNL, or like her years in SNL, it didn't really even register with me. And she wasn't one of the major players.
I mean, I think she was on with Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo, Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
So getting back to Groundhog Day here. Getting back to the Me Too thing.
Oh, yes.
So Phil Connors, the Bill Murray's character in this, is a real asshole. He's a misogynist. He refers to the female anchor on the news program he's on as hairdo. He is he meets Andie MacDowell's character Rita, and I mean really just wants to sleep with her, and isn't shy about. He doesn't try to hide it. And it's interesting because it's kind of like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, wait a second, this is like, I mean, he uses it to get laid. He gets all that woman's information. And then, you know, he uses the thing to get laid. So he's this misogynist player who learns his lesson. And it's kind of... It's kind of like, you know, maybe this is the movie for men to be watching in the Me Too era. Right. Maybe it has its place here.
So just very ahead of its time in that way.
Well, I think it speaks to. I mean, it speaks to. I mean, it was current because this was happening. I think right around the same time as the Clarence Thomas hearings.
Clarence Thomas, yeah,
and Anita Hill. So. It's kind of, you know, it was relevant then, but possibly more.
It's one of those things that's kind of always been there, but like probably, just more so now.
We notice it now. We see it now, and
it's more of a major topic of conversation. It has its own name.
Yeah.
The Me Too movement. So it is kind of perfect for this to be, this is a movie that is watched currently very actively by a lot of people. You know, it is for many people a Groundhog Day tradition to watch this movie. You know,
though I think this was the first year I actually watched it on Groundhog Day or Groundhog's Day.
I know that is not true for me. But I think it's a great tradition. It's like in it, the nature of the movie itself makes it rewatchable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just really fascinating. It's one of those movies that like you know, there are so many movies from that era where I watch it and I watch it again. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I watched that again. But like, I can take another 10 years before I watch it again. But like this one, you can watch it any day of the year, as many times as you want, and it's still equally enjoyable, if not more.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah. So of
so
course,
referring to the premise of this podcast,
yes,
which is kind of discussing what we think should happen to a movie in terms of sequels, prequels, reboots, remakes, etc. This actually had some interesting news recently
about a Groundhog Day sequel,
video game.
Oh, wait, a Groundhog Day video. This is news to me right now.
Okay, I think that it was on Groundhog Day that they announced on VR platforms. So all of the like PlayStation View and all those VR platforms, they're making a Groundhog Day game. I mean, this is at least what they're claiming is about to happen. Let's see. I've got it on so on Wikipedia, it says Sony Pictures
Go ahead.
Yeah, it says Sony Pictures Virtual Reality Division, along with game developer Tequila Works, are developing a sequel to the film via way of a virtual reality video game, Groundhog Day, Like Father, Like Son, to be released on the PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, and HTC Vive headsets. The game has the player take the role of Phil's son, Phil Connors Jr., who similarly becomes trapped in a time loop while in Punxsutawney and requires the player to figure out how to escape it. The game is announced on Groundhog Day 2019 and is expected to be released in late 2019. That's a fast turnaround.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
how do you feel about this?
I've never played any VR games.
Yeah, me either.
So I guess how I feel about it is why a sequel if you're going to take Groundhog Day and turn it into a VR video game? Couldn't it just be couldn't you just be in the shoes of Phil Connors and you watch out for that first step, it's a doozy. Do you get to punch Ned Ryerson? Then you get to punch Ned Ryerson, and what do you run into Ned Ryerson's son? Is it just the same thing?
I don't know. I guess maybe we'll find out. I don't know how I would ever play this game. I
am skeptical, but I have very little knowledge of the platform. So,
well, let's cut to the chase.
Yeah.
What would you do with this, if anything?
I wouldn't. First of all, I wouldn't do anything with it.
Okay.
I wouldn't. Nope. I would put it out into theaters every year around Groundhog's Day. Promote it as a special, just see how many theaters you can get that will just play it on a loop all day long.
Right.
So you could even buy a pass where you can just sit there and watch Groundhog Day all day long and repeat the day infinitely with Phil. So I really don't think so, though I did have some, I was trying to think, all right, how could this possibly work as a sequel or remake or reboot? And I have some ideas. I think the main plot, just to remake it, you can't do that. The updated technology would, it's kind of the scenario would be prevented. There's no way a storm of that magnitude wouldn't be predictable, and everyone would just be on their phones saying, Phil, you're wrong. Everybody, we checked Cliff Mass in Seattle. Right. He says it's going to hit. And
he knows. He's always right.
I
don't know how he knows the Punxsutawney weather, but he's good.
Look, if
he's
he
the best.
If he wants to know it, he knows it. That's Cliff Mass. So no, seriously. So I was, and it was funny because I was thinking about like, all right, like who would I cast in different roles, and what would you do? And then I thought, I was like, oh yeah, it kind of would be interesting to see a Will Ferrell version of it, but I'm not asking for it. And then I kind of thought, what if you did Anchorman 3
Okay.
as a Groundhog Day reboot, with Ron Burgundy starting to fade into obscurity in the early 1990s.
Whoa, interesting.
And he has to, he has to relive this. I don't know if it's Groundhog Day or if you do it on another day, but I think it would be funny if it was Ron Burgundy on Groundhog Day and he has to relive Groundhog Day, and maybe it's in San Diego, maybe it's he goes back to the San Diego Zoo, or maybe he is in Punxsutawney. I don't know.
That is a very interesting concept. I like it.
It's kind of the
It's fun.
only. It's kind of the only, like the only acceptable option for me.
Well, let me tell you the one thought that I had, because I do agree with you. This should not be remade or rebooted. No. It is excellent as is. I wouldn't say perfect, just because I don't think that anything is necessarily perfect, but it's great as it is. You cannot mess with it. It totally holds up. It's just wonderful. But and okay, a prequel. What's the point? There's really nothing to see there.
What's going to happen? I just don't like the idea of, this happens to him
right
again.
So, yeah, and so what we had talked about on the last episode of this podcast is Weekend at Bernie's, and this kind of is similar a little bit to Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2, but the sequel to the original was so far outlandish. I mean, the original is like weird and whatever, but like it's not completely bananas, whereas the second one, especially for Weekend at Bernie's, where there's like a voodoo curse or something,
it's just incoherent,
right? Whereas Groundhog Day can be looked at as a fantasy movie. It can be looked at as something that is, I mean, I don't know if science fiction is necessarily proper, but it is a fantasy movie.
It's a surreal comedy.
It's a surreal comedy, so it wouldn't be surprising or annoying to have a sequel that had similar threads. So what I was thinking was, okay, it's however many years later, it's 30 years later, whatever, and you've got, and I'm blanking on the name of the character, but Michael Shannon's character.
Yes.
Michael Shannon.
Frank.
Frank.
Or Fred and Debbie.
This is our first time ever seeing Michael Shannon. He
does not look scary.
Michael Shannon is one of my favorite actors currently. Everything that I see him in, he really just commands the screen. When you see him in like interviews or anything about him in real life, you're just like, wow, he is just like a really goofy, weird guy, and just kind of likable. Like, it's not the kind of goofy and weird that you roll your eyes at. It's the kind of goofy and weird where you're just like, I want to see more of what this guy's got going on. And then when you see him in a movie, you're just like, whoa, he is crazy.
He kind of reminds me. Sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
Like he kind of, I know I made the comment about scary, but I think Michael Shannon brings a lot to everything he's in, including Groundhog Day. But he also, I see him in like the Willem Dafoe, kind of Christopher Walken, but not quite Christopher Walken, but more like the Willem Dafoe, like who's got so much versatility,
right?
But when you see Willem Dafoe with a switchblade in a movie, you're like, Willem Dafoe knows how to handle himself and knows how to handle a blade. So, and I think the same of Michael Shannon. Yeah,
and Michael Shannon, his character Fred, the things that we know about Fred in Groundhog Day, so he is a big wrestling fan.
They're going
Phil
to
gets them
WrestleMania.
tickets to WrestleMania at the end.
Little known fact. I do have to interrupt. We do have a little. This when we say that Groundhog Day is not a perfect movie. This is an instance where we can back that up. Pittsburgh has not hosted a WrestleMania. They hosted part of the first WrestleMania, which was kind of, I guess, simulcast would have been the word, from 3 different locations. But Pittsburgh has not hosted, and we know it's Pittsburgh because they say, "Oh, and that's great, we're going to be there anyway." But so another reason why this is a fantasy is that there was no WrestleMania in Pittsburgh.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that is interesting. So, okay, we know he loves wrestling. We know that so in the movie he is engaged to be married to Debbie.
Oh, but she's having cold feet.
She's having cold feet, and then before they get the WrestleMania tickets, or maybe it's right after, but anyway, they thank Phil for helping their relationship, and then Fred gives like Rita a kiss or like a big hug or something,
yeah.
And Debbie like kind of gives him a little punch on the shoulder, and so it's like, okay, so the two of them, they got a little bit of fight in them, and I think that I would like to see, if I was to see anything happen with this, a sequel following Michael Shannon's character 30 whatever years later, and like he's just gotten so off course in his life, and things are, on the fritz with Debbie, and he's got to make things right, and he has to relive Groundhog Day over and over and over. What's up?
I'm sorry, because I kind of thought where you were going with this was that he eventually, like, he becomes a wrestler, and I'm kind of thinking of, the aging and all that, and I'm like, so wait, does he just become Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler? And do we find him and he's like living in the trailer playing the Nintendo game and like working at the grocery store? Is it just a remake of The Wrestler?
No, I don't think he would become a wrestler.
Could you imagine?
I think it's fun though. That's a fun idea.
If he became a wrestler, yeah, I mean,
or it's like, what if he was so influenced by Phil on that one day that he knew Phil that maybe he got into meteorology, like maybe he followed that same path, like, or maybe he just got into broadcast journalism or something like that.
Yeah, he was inspired. He said, I want to be like this great man.
Or maybe he has a very successful wrestling blog that, got bought by, I don't know, Condé Nast or one of those, big corporations.
A publishing.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the one that does The Inquirer.
I'm not going to give like a whole synopsis here, but I'm just thinking if there was going to be a sequel, if we were going to follow a character from the movie again, maybe him, maybe Chris Elliott's character.
You take advantage that Michael Shannon is a big name now, and he was General Zod, so he was great as Zod. I feel like he was the best part of that movie, Man of Steel. Yeah. Man of Steel. Yeah, well, we'll get to the Superman reboots.
Oh boy, but he's wonderful. Groundhog Day is wonderful, and it really shouldn't be touched.
No, no,
it just really shouldn't.
No, I don't think so. And thankfully, I don't think anyone really wants to. Beyond
apparently this video game situation, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how many.
It seems just like a cash grab to me.
I don't know how many people who love Groundhog Day are gonna like run out and buy like VR sets and do this just wow, the sequel to Groundhog Day that I probably wouldn't even go see if it was in the theater. Sounds like direct to Netflix. It's like the Kindergarten Cop 2.
Which we will get to eventually.
Oh, yes. Yes, we will. Yeah.
I guess in closing, we're done with Groundhog Day. Just keep rewatching it.
Yeah.
Maybe is rewatch just a new category for us?
A rewatch? Yeah, just
Yeah.
well, I mean, we could do rewatch, re-release.
Re-release, yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of just being able to go see movies in a theater on a big screen that I was too young to see, or that I just missed in their initial release.
Well, wait, we totally just completely blew past something big. The stage adaptation.
Oh, the musical, yes.
Right.
That's right.
So this did have a remake, the stage adaptation in 2015?
Yeah.
2016
so.
it premiered. It premiered in 2016, and then in 2017 it went to Broadway. And apparently was highly regarded. I need to follow up on that. I don't really know too much about it.
I do. I'm not sure who else I know that saw it, but I know our Uncle Richard saw it, and we talked about it last time I saw him, and he said he really liked it, and he sees a lot of theater, and definitely would call it. You know, he's not just going to be impressed by, you know, the big song and dance. Although, wait, didn't Mom see it too?
I believe so. I'm not sure. Okay, so we talked video game, we talked the musical, we talked about our theories. There's actually one other thing that I wanted to mention. Have you seen or heard anything about the new Netflix series Russian Doll?
Yes, actually. I haven't watched it yet.
I'm 2 episodes in, but this is essentially the new updated version of Groundhog Day.
Yeah, you know,
It is about...
I know someone who worked on it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, she was
cool.
Natasha Lyonne's body double. And she
no way.
Her stunt double. She's the wife of a former coworker of mine. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So
So the premise of Russian Doll is it's this woman who keeps on dying and restarting in the bathroom at her birthday party that's being thrown for her by a friend. Mm-hmm. And I'm only 2 episodes in, so I can't tell you where it goes beyond that, but she's already died several times. And it's funny, it's weird, it's very heady, and it definitely has the like Groundhog Day feel where she's trying to figure out what's going on, why this is happening. It's, I don't know. I'm curious to see where it takes me, but
it seems like she's I don't want to say kind of a mess at the beginning, but it definitely seems like she kind of has a character transformation to make just based on the trailers I've seen.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so she's way into drugs. She parties all night. Like, there's a lot of things about her that definitely you could see as being like things she needs to work on. Yeah. So, you know, relationships, all that kind of stuff. So, I do feel like this is the answer to like a Groundhog Day, I guess, refresh. But it's not calling itself that. It's not even, you know, making any reference to it.
It's just the concept.
Yeah. Which is also, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if there was some sort of reference to it, because to say that you are having a Groundhog Day type situation, like people refer to Groundhog Day as this phenomenon.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of become part of the lexicon.
The lexicon, the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
So, I feel like Russian Doll is really, truly the answer to a Groundhog Day.
But it's not the first one since Groundhog Day to do kind of a repetition. I feel like Run Lola Run, which I haven't seen in a long time, 20 years ago. I don't think though that she, if I remember, I don't remember her being like aware that she was that it was happening over and over again.
I don't think so.
I actually felt like it was more like you just got to see different possibilities, kind of like sliding doors.
Right.
But yeah, no, I see. I think the concept is Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm interested to see it applied in this context.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I've got to contribute to this. If anybody has any thoughts about Groundhog Day, email us at ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. And Dan, what's our next episode going to be about?
Next up, we are going to be visiting or revisiting the world of Bill and Ted. The Excellent Adventure, The Bogus Journey, everything else.
And the TBD.
The TBD,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
And
Station.
Station.
So check out one of the Bill and Ted movies if you want to follow along in the next episode, or if you have any thoughts, like I said, email ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com about Bill and Ted, Groundhog Day, any of the movies we talked about, anything you want to add about any of this. If you've seen the musical, we'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Make your voice heard. That's been Ruined Childhood's podcast, and we'll see you next time.